Hey guys, so welcome. So this is our third night of six, so we'll be halfway through after tonight. So this is our last market group before we go into breeding animals. All right, so hopefully you've all been watching. If you haven't been able to be on live watching the videos, I'm actually seeing there's about 30 to 40 views on each video so far. So people are watching it, which I think that is great. So with that, Rylan, I'll turn it over to you for tonight.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Again, we're going to be talking sheep and goats today. So since we got to cover two species, we're going to roll through them pretty quick because we're going to try and get through 4 classes tonight if possible. So we're going to really rock and roll here. So show of hands here in the chat box there. How many of y'all show sheep or goats? Sheep or goats? Excellent. So a lot of people using the hand raising feature. Good. Good, good. So we got quite a few folks that show sheep or goats or both. Okay. So personally, I grew up showing predominantly goats and swine. Those are my two main species. Definitely fell away from my love of goats a little bit over time. Just found really a lot of love in pigs. But I got a lot of respect for goats and folks that show goats or breed them and stuff. I think it's definitely a much more complicated uh, piece of evaluation, and a lot of folks get really nervous when it comes to really kind of just like judging or evaluating livestock. They kind of get nervous when they come to a market lamb class or a market or a market goat class. So, but what I will tell you is this: so you keep in mind when we do all of this, at majority of contests that I have ever been to, you're going to be able to handle that animal. Okay. So what that means is on a market animal, you're going to be able to walk up and be able to feel it down its top. Okay. So when we do that, essentially what we're doing is we're feeling for two things. One, we're feeling the shape and the size of the muscle. Okay. We talk about that muscle shape there in the rack and the loin. And we're also feeling for a lot of times the trimness of the muscle. So basically how trim that animal is. So unfortunately, we look at some pictures, and I will admit sometimes it's a little bit harder, but we're going to talk about, some of those other things to help you kind of get a good idea of how you're going to place that class before you go in to handle those animals. So that's kind of a big thing with me. But we're gonna rock and roll. So if you haven't already, make sure that you have set up your note sheet. Okay. So again, we're gonna start with market lambs. Okay. Market lambs. Make sure you have the title. Make sure you have room for 1, 2, 3, 4. There's always 4 animals in the class, and then your little spot there to be able to record your placing. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, market lambs. Now, talking about market lambs again, some things we got to make sure we do is got to make sure that we follow, our same market characteristics. So, does it have enough muscle? Is it trim, or does it have enough finish to it? Okay. So, with sheep and goats, we're going to be looking more so for them to still be trim. They can have a little bit of muscle, a little bit of finish to them, and a little bit of fat, but in general, we want them to still stay pretty trim. All right. So, one thing to keep in mind as well with sheep and goats. Oh, excuse me. 1 second. I got to deal with something else really quick. I'll be right back.
So when Rylan is dealing with that, probably his dogs, I'm guessing. So just a couple things that we're talking about. So on the Facebook page, as you guys can see that, so I did share the champion choice camps again. So if you do show sheep and goats, parents or anything like that, that is in Ballston Spa this year on May 19th. It is expensive, but it is well worth every penny for the kids to do that. You actually take your animals to that, and it's a great camp. Tracy Denninger, she actually taught one of the livestock summits, and actually it's on the YouTube page. You can actually see her. She's actually an instructor for that also. So that's May 19th. The deadline for that is coming up pretty quickly to sign up for that. So kids that are showing sheep and goats, it's well worth every penny. So my family last year traveled 4 hours to go to it for the first time, and it was worth it. So that deadline's coming, and see it on the Facebook page.
Awesome. Again, I apologize, guys. Part of it is tonight we have, I'm a bowling coach for the high school here, and we have our banquet tonight. And so the head coach was like, "Hey, I need this and I need this." And I'm like, It's all at my house, so she just had to come by and pick it up really quick. But anyway, so with market goats on market lambs. So on the lamb side specifically, market lambs were kind of freaks about levelness. Okay. So when you talk about sheep, we want them to be just dead level down their tops. Now, with cattle, we can give a little bit. Swine, we still want them to be pretty level, but lambs, we want them to really be sitting at a 90-degree angle. Okay. So when I have my lamb, so let's say this is my lamb back here. Okay. And then I have the neck. I want that to sit at 90 degrees. I want to have him set up. Okay. So coming right there almost to a point, coming right down really, really hard and really, really have that sharp edge to it. Okay. So when we talk about it, we talk about them being really level down their tops and then going straight up into their neck. Okay. It's really, really important. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my first class and I'll talk you through this first one. Okay. Okay, here we go. So again, market lambs, number one. It's our first class market lambs. So other things with market lambs as well. Okay, like pigs and cattle, we got to make sure we find an ID. Okay, if you don't know sheep breeds very well, that's okay. Just know the majority of the time when you're going to evaluate market lambs, you're probably going to end up looking at some black-faced sheep. At least that's what we have here in the Midwest. We have a lot of black-faced sheep that we show in the market class. All right. So this is a black-faced sheep. Looks like it has some longer pointed ears and not so much wool there. So we're going to call it a Suffolk. Okay. And we're going to call it a Suffolk. Now, when we talk him, we got to be careful. We can't necessarily call it a Suffolk because we don't know that for sure. Okay. So I would say the Suffolk appearing sheep. All right. Next thing we got to look at, just like with hogs, we got to make sure that they check to see if it's a boy or a girl. Here in the Midwest, we can run our ewes as market animals as well. Okay. So I'm checking here. She doesn't have a sheath, and I don't see a protruding vulva, but if I were to see her in person, I would know this one is a ewe. Okay. I'm going to say it's a Suffolk appearing ewe. All right. Then as I kind of sit here and I kind of look at her a little bit, okay. Perfect. Good to know, Brian. Okay, so again, we look at her and really study. Okay, I'm looking for muscle. Well, I'm going to look at the same places I've been looking at before. I'm going to look down her top. Okay, it's kind of hard to tell right here. And as far as, it's on a picture and stuff, not quite in person. But I'm really going to study her here in her leg. All right, we talk a lot in sheep about the amount of width and dimension there through their hip and their rear leg. Okay, so it looks like she's kind of got some, maybe not the most. Okay, maybe not the most. Then I talk about how level she is. Okay, like how level that one is. She's got some extension up front. Okay, with our sheep and our goats, we want them to be super duper, what we call elevated and really shallow there in their chest floor. So they're coming up and being really tight and really high there in their chest. She gets a little bit lower. Okay, if I'm talking really high, she's kind of going to be sitting at a little bit of a different angle here. Okay, and then with our market steers and our market swine, we talked about having some rib and some capacity so they can really go through and be able to put on, take in some groceries and stuff and being able to convert it into muscle. Okay. Now, again, sheep and goats are a little bit different. Okay. All right. Sheep and goats are a little bit different. When we talk about it, we want them to have what we call really round rib shape. Okay. So when we see one that's just super, super soft-sided, that's actually usually going to be a negative thing. Okay. Now, I'm not saying they need to be like super duper skinny looking, really sucked up in, but we want to have a nice round rib shape. Okay. And this one I would say definitely has some round rib shape and it's got some wet depth to it. And I don't want to make you think that, oh, well, deep rib is bad. It can have some, but I don't want it to look like a market steer. It's just super deep and soggy. Okay. And then I saw someone comment on there about her structure. Absolutely. She's maybe pushing forward a little bit here in her knee. Okay. But as far as her build and design, I think that's a really level one. She's really square out of her hip. She's got some extension. She's got plenty of rib. maybe not quite as muscle. So I'm going to make notes of that. Okay. She's got plenty of rib. Okay. She's got some extension. But on first glance, and I really look at this one and really study her, I'm kind of like, she's kind of a plain sheep. Okay. There's nothing that really wows you about that one. She's kind of plain. Okay. So I'm going to make note of that. She's kind of plain. All right. And again, I'm going to be moving a little bit quicker tonight because we're going to be looking for a lot of those same things. So we're going to roll through a little bit because we got to do more classes. Okay, coming up on number 2. Okay, first thing. All right, this one's a wether. Okay, if it's a wether, that means it's a boy. All right, I could probably argue this one's maybe a Suffolk or a Hamp. Okay, but again, we're just going to call this one a wether. All right, first thing I'm seeing. Okay, I really like how shallow and up and elevated he is there in his chest. Okay, he's got a real long neck to him. So I like kind of this front 1/3. Okay, so we divide our animals into thirds. We got a front, a middle, and a rear. I like this guy in his front 1/3. So I'm going to say good in his front. But I think that's kind of where he falls apart. You guys agree? Okay, we look at this one. We already know, all right, Rylan here is talking about how level our sheep need to be. Okay, that thing is running downhill. Okay, or his rear end, he goes really, really high and then just falls apart going back. Okay, that's a really, really poorly put together one. So I'm going to make a note. He's got really poor structure. Okay, when I say,
Rylan, when you were saying running downhill, what do you mean by that?
sorry. Usually in the livestock terms, we talk about it's a good thing for one to be running uphill. So we talk about their front, they're being really high at the point of their shoulder, and then kind of carrying down, not necessarily be like dragging down the back, but this guy in college, we would call this one donkey hipped. Okay. Donkeys aren't known for being super square and level out of their hip. So when I'm talking about him being downhill, I mean that in a really negative way, that he starts here high on his shoulder, but then he just falls off. Okay. He really, really wants to round out of his hip. All right. And that's a negative thing. We want him to be, again, we are freaks about levelness with our sheep. We want them to be super level, okay? If you got wool sheep and stuff, a lot of the time when they fit them out, they'll want them to be super duper level. They'll even trim that wool so it's super duper level going across, right? Okay, so with these sheep, with market sheep, we slick them. And so we're not really going to have that ability to kind of hide flaws with wool. Okay, but this one really just wants to fall off really hard. Okay, there in his rear. So I'm going to say he's got really poor structure. He is really straight. Someone made a point of that. There's really no give to his knee. But I'm going to tell you, our sheep and goats are going to have a little bit different structure. Okay, they're going to be a little bit, kind of have a straighter appearance there from knee to ground or hock to ground. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing. But if we got this guy out on the move, I bet he's going to hunch up really bad in his top, and he's just not going to move very comfortable. Okay, so he's got a really elevated and shallow chest and really elevated front. I would definitely say he's lean in his muscle. Okay, I'm going to say he's lean. But again, that's one that's going to kind of work a little bit against him. Okay, I think it was a hog last week. Yep, we had a hog last week that was super, super powerful, a lot of muscle, but it was so much muscle and not any fat at all that it worked against her. Okay, we got a similar situation here. He's got some muscle here, but there is not any give to him at all. So it's a poor structured lamb who's not been fed right either, and it's not going to go to the rail with a very quality carcass. Okay, following me there? All right, so that's number 2. Okay, number 3. All right, so this one's a lot different. Okay, this one's going to be another wether. Okay, another wether. Now, my initial look, that's a pretty sleek design sheep. Okay, that's one that's really, really leveled on their top. They come down really square, really even. on both all 4 feet. I really like that. That's something I'm going to really make note of is really well balanced.
So Riley, can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yeah.
And anybody else is welcome to. So you're talking about level on the top line, right? So when
Mhm.
you say level, it means straight, but it doesn't mean that the front is the same height as the rear,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Because
it's
when,
just a straight line, but
yep.
it is goes downhill a little bit. And I
Yes.
just want to make that point just to help the kids a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. But that's kind of the thing. So with that too, remember guys, when you show your sheep, you're kind of holding their head up. So they're going to be a little more up, set up a little bit straighter there in their front. So that's definitely what Brian's talking about. You want a level line, but it's not necessarily going to be super just square going straight all the way back. All right. There's going to be a little bit of give coming down. Okay. Because they're going to be leading into you a little bit. But again, this is one that, you know, you look at, you're like, okay, that's a real level sheep. Okay. Looks really, really level. It's really square. And as far as when I talk about balance, okay, talk about balance. We want our animals to be proportional. So as I look at this sheep, I'm like, okay, look in here where the forerib comes all the way back. It looks pretty full and it looks pretty level as well. So again, if I could draw a line, I'd want a straight line here and a straight line pretty well here too, right? So again, sheep are a little bit different. We want them to be super level, super square. We're kind of crazy about that, okay? Don't mean in a bad way, but a little crazy. So another weather, okay? Really, really well balanced, really square, okay? I'd say this is a really well built one. Super up-headed. Really like the neck and the extension on that one, okay? And I haven't talked a lot about muscle. And I noticed that. Okay. And part of that is because it's really nice to be able to get your hand on one or see one in person to be able to see a lot of muscle. So this one I would say doesn't necessarily have an immense amount of muscle, but there's some muscle there. So here in the top, if you look really closely, you follow it down, there's kind of that bump up there a little bit. So what that is going to kind of be the start there of the loin. Okay. And so if we got a loin that's popping out, that's usually a pretty good thing. Now I still want that to be level down, but I'm just from this picture, you can tell there's some shape there. Okay. So we've got some muscle. Okay. All right. I promise we'll see some heavy muscled sheep out here, but these are some older pictures of some older sheep. All right. So again, we got a weather that's he's really balanced. He's really square, got some muscle to him, really extended. Okay. Appreciate a lot of that about him. All right. Now look at it number 4. Okay. So number 4, first thing I'm going to note is this guy's got some muscle. We finally got some muscle here. So we talk about the shape there of the leg. Okay. That's a lamb that's got some real shape there. Okay. And if I got my hands on this one, I can tell you right now, there's going to be plenty of muscle up top. All right. So first I'm going to point out this is a wether. And he is a heavy muscled boy. Okay. Real heavy muscle type sheep. All right. Now he's got the muscle. He doesn't appear to be fat. If he was fat, he'd have a great big super protruding breastbone here. Okay. And he'd be kind of greasy looking, but he's not. Looks like he's really trim, really heavy muscled. Okay. Then I look at my other stuff. Well, is this one built right? Is he level? Does he meet my qualifications of that? 100%. That's a really level, long body type sheep who, again, is really high and elevated up there in his chest floor and got a neat neck and front to him. Okay. And on top of it, he steps down in some pretty big feet with some shag and bone on him. All right. Again, we don't eat bone, but it helps to portray the idea of a really stout, heavy muscled animal. So again, he's got plenty of look and he's got just some real lot of good market pieces to him. Okay. So as I evaluate him, that's kind of what I'm looking at and what I'm thinking. I'm like, all right, you know, this guy's actually got some good stuff to him. Got plenty of muscle. Okay. And doing all the things right. All right. So that's what I got. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to go back through them all again. And then I actually was able to, on this class, Brian had mentioned that it'd be easier for you guys to be able to see it, all four of them together. So I'm going to be able to do that here in a second, okay? But again, number one, again, that U, she's got plenty of rib shape. She's got some muscle, not quite enough. We maybe see some issues there in her structure there through her front leg, but she's okay. She's all right. I think that's maybe kind of a middle pair type sheep. Okay. Coming to this guy. Oof. This guy again, first thing we notice, he is not well put together. Okay. He's just not very level. He wants to roach up here in his top. Okay. He's got a nice, really elevated, really elegant front, but he's just not really kind of rocking it there as far as the rest of his skeleton goes. Kind of falls apart a little bit after his front 1/3. Running here again, one that I think we just said was really well balanced, really put together. I think got some muscle to that one. It's really square, got plenty of look and extension. And then we fall here into the 4 sheep. Okay. One that's got, in addition to having a lot of power and punch there through the hip, got lots of top, got plenty of rib here, and still has a really neat look up front. Okay. So here's all the sheep together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and get in your final placings and go ahead and put them there in the chat. Okay, I'm pretty consistently seeing the same answers across the board, and I probably didn't do a very good job of letting you make your own opinions and kind of push my own opinions a little bit pretty quick. But I just want you guys to see some different types of sheep and be able to just kind of read through and be able to understand what a quality, well-built one looks like. So you're exactly right, okay? In the sense that number 4 is the way to go. All right. Number 4 is absolutely the best sheep. He's has the right combination of stoutness and power. I got a really big round rib cage and got some softness there through it, but not too much. I think that's one that's got a lot of extension up front, comes at the ground with some stoutness and width there at the bone. They have Danny's bone, so he's definitely going to be a sheep that we start off with. All right. Following it up, I think the next sheep that's the most similar in type and kind was definitely the 3 sheep. One that I think's got a super neat look, really, really well balanced, square built, but one that I think just needs to have a bit more punch there through his hip and hind leg. Just have more power to that one to be able to get him to scotch out the one ahead of him. But again, a really well balanced, nicely made sheep. Coming up here to the U, the lone U of the class again is one who's got some length of body, some extension. Wants to maybe be a little bit too soft there through a ribbon middle. Would like to tighten that one up just a little bit and shallow her up a scotch, but she's also similar to the one ahead of her, not carrying quite as enough muscle and power to her to be able to move up higher. But again, one that I think's got some levelness, some extension, and I appreciate the length of her body. Coming up here to number 4, again, one that I think's got some really neat pieces there through his front 1/3, really shallow, really elevated. Unfortunately, just one that really that's where he kind of falls apart after that. He's one that I think just really needs to rock and roll and just be put together with a much better skeleton. One that I think needs to just kind of come down much more comfortable.
Okay, I turned my volume down.
And just making sure that, he's just fix him up there as far as his hip and his overall design and build goes. Okay. So again, that one we placed it, which looks like most people 50'd it. 3, 4, 1, 2. That's a 3, 4, and 5.
So Rylan, if I go back to that
Four.
class, if I go back to that class and I look at them, and I would say probably the kids too, if they looked at it, there's a fancy one that just sticks out like a sore thumb, right? Like she's fancy, in number 3, but she just doesn't have that muscling. And I think that's where kids get caught, right? Like she's fancy. Just she sticks out to you. But if you look at that rear and just the capacity, I would say, right? That's the big thing. But she is fancy.
Absolutely. And when I've taught this class and used the same one, and again, these are materials I've used for years now, but that's one that I think kids get really hung up on. They worry that this guy's maybe too fat, but that's definitely not a fat sheep. So that's the thing. You got to find the right combination. So again, we talked about it last week. One of our last class we looked at, we had that all black pig that you guys kind of single traded him a little bit. And got a little too hung up on that. That can also happen in a positive way in the sense of, or you find a positive that you really like, to be able to rock and roll through that and make sure that you really, you're just like, that one's just so good built. I think that's, that's a big priority in sheep. I want to really focus on that, but you got to be careful. Okay. You got to evaluate the whole animal. They've got to have all the right pieces or the most good moving forward. So that was a really good point. I agree. That's a super fancy one, but just gets edged out by this 4 lamb. Just it's got way more power in addition to being well built on good made lamb. All right. So I'm gonna rock and roll here. Where do I? Haha, there it is. All right, I was looking for the button. Okay, are you guys ready to move on to lambs number 2? Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. Good deal. So go ahead and nod your head, or not nod your head. Go ahead and set up your stuff for Market Lambs 2. And this one, again, I'm not really going to talk you through so much. You're going to kind of be a little bit more on your own here, okay? Market Lambs number 2. Go ahead and set up your papers if you haven't already. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. All right. We're going to roll through. And again, I'm going to kind of just let you kind of make some decisions on your own, talk you through a little bit. But again, considering time, we've got to really rock and roll with it. We're going to get right on into some other stuff so we can cover goats tonight too. Okay, so here we go. Market lambs 2. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get them set together as all 4. So I will for sure have that moving forward with heifers next week. Have a page where I've got all 4 of them. Okay. All right, here we go. Number 1. Again, make note. Is it a ewe? Is it a wether? If you are a sheep person that can really understand breeds really well from their appearance, what do you kind of think it is? Again, be careful trading it to be that, or maybe just call it a that appearing. Okay. Again, study it for the width and shape up high to kind of see if you're able to read through a little bit what kind of muscle and kind of muscle pattern is a sheep carrying. Does it have some width and power from behind? Got enough look and levelness? Is it really extended up front? Okay. Overall design, just think about, all right, as I'm looking at this one, he's designed well. It's got some muscle, got some rib shape, but is he going to have enough to be able to win it? Well, I think maybe this one's going to be more of a top pair type sheep, or maybe it's a middle pair type sheep. Okay. Got to make those decisions yourself. Okay. Again, that's number 1. All right, number 2. Again, another wether here. Try and really read through to study him for the amount of muscle and power he's carrying. Notice this one's maybe a little bit statter there at the ground. But does that necessarily always mean he's got the most muscle? Okay. Study him for the length of his neck. Again, just kind of adds all things to going into a stout made, really pretty designed, good built sheep. Look at some stuff there. What are we looking at? What are we thinking? Okay, make your notes. Okay, I'm going to move on to the 3rd sheep. Sheep 3. Really study that one for its quality of build. Studying for its power. Does it have rib? Is it extended? Have some length? Okay, so number 3. All right, coming down to number 4. Okay, again, study that one for the amount of muscle it's got. Does it have enough power and punch there in the hip and hind leg? Does it have some rib? Is that rib shaped round, or is it just super soft and soggy? Again, study this one just for its overall design. Just how it's put together in addition to those market characteristics. Okay, I'm going to go back through them all again. Okay, number 1. Number 2. Number 3. And finally, number 4. Okay, go ahead and get your placings pop there into the chat box. Okay, I'm definitely seeing some people a little bit all over the place, and that's totally okay. All right, again, in my opinion, I think sheep are some of the harder ones to evaluate if you're not a sheep person, but that's why we got to use the KISS method. Keep it simple. Don't be stupid. Okay, just keep it simple. So again, we can't get too hung up on how those sheep are. We got to put some emphasis on the design and build, but also remember these are market animals. Okay, so we can use that a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of, I feel like I'm contradicting myself a little bit, and I'm really trying not to. Just sheep are a little bit different in that how we evaluate them. We just put more emphasis on the overall look and design of them. So we don't want an ugly sheep to win a class. All right. But we don't want an ugly bear to win the class or an ugly steer, but we put a little, just a tick more emphasis there on the looks with the sheep. All right. So here we go. So I'm going to talk through them all individually, and then we'll go through it all, give you the placing. So let's talk number 1. So I think number 1 is, again, kind of a slick made sheep. That's a really long bodied one. Really love the extension that one's carrying about its head and neck. Carrying enough power there. I think that one's got a really easy looking look. There through its middle one that's really round in the rib shape. One that I think maybe needs to be stepped down on a bigger foot and bone just to match the power and dimension that it's carrying up high. But again, I think overall quality sheep that I'd change just a couple things to it. Maybe just add a little more punch there from behind, but overall, I think a quality sheep. Coming up here, number two. Number two is one that I think I really like this one. Again, for the front 1/3, I think we had a sheep similar in the last class. Really like the length and extension of that one. Got a really tall, elevated, shallow chest. But this is one that I think just gets disproportionate in its type of its type and its balance. So it just for me just gets a little bit too hard, a little bit tighter there in the forerib, and feeds it into a little bit too full there from behind, and just not really carrying nearly as much power and muscle as some of the other sheep in this class. On what do I think just gets a little bit more rigid in their top line? Just want to get a little bit too straight and want to redesign that one from a skeletal standpoint. I just kind of help it out in a couple ways in that. Moving on here to the number 3 sheep. I think that's just the power sheep of the class. Really big hipped, really well made. Carrying lots of width and dimension from up high, and I appreciate how level that one is up down the top line, and one who carries and fills himself really well. Have a really well balanced underline just in how he's carrying it from his forerib to his flank. Really full, and appreciate that about him. Again, one that I think is just built well and designed well. I will admit, yeah, someone came in. If I had to fault this one, yes, he's definitely got a shorter neck. That's looking a little bit coarser there in the way the young lady's handling him. But one, I think that you just can't get past the amount of width and power he's carrying on in a well-designed look from his shoulder back. Coming up here into 4, I think this is one that's just got some size and some capacity to it. Probably the highest performing lamb in the class. Again, one that's just got some size and frame to him. Got plenty of width. For me, I think this one's maybe just pushing a tick old. I think this one's just coming up here to be a little bit too mature in his type. Just kind of getting to where he's kind of popping a little bit too much there in his top. He's lost some extra expression dimension there from behind. But again, I think one that's definitely got some pounds of product to him, and I appreciate that. So overall, my final placing would be
Brian, before you do that,
Oh.
go back to that last one. So if
Yep.
I look at his legs, right, like I feel like his leg, he just doesn't, it doesn't show the length because of his legs. Do you know what I mean? Compared to the other ones,
Yep.
right? If everybody notices that, I just feel like the legs are, he just doesn't have that. It doesn't extend like the other used or other weathers do in the class.
Yep.
I
And
think that's what makes it look funky.
Yep. He's just off in his balance. He's just not built right. And he's one who I mentioned. I think this one's just a bit older than the other sheep in here, and that's going to work against him. As sheep get older, they start to put on more fat. They get to have just a bit softer muscle and just having more fat. Kind of get almost a greasy look to him. And this guy, he's kind of pushing to be in that point, just a heavier guy with where he's at. So, final placing, if you didn't see it, Brian caught me good. Okay, 3-1, 2-4 is the official placing for this class. Cuts of 4, 4, and 4. So again, we start off that power sheep, guys. You've got to love the amount of power and dimension this guy's carrying, okay? He's dead leveled on his top, carrying an immense amount of hip and hind leg to him. Comes down with a big old foot that's got a lot of shag and bone to him. Really blends together nicely, really well balanced. Sure, that's where I kind of worry about me sounding a little bit contradictory here. He does get to where he's a bit short-necked for me, but when you talk about a complete animal, he's got the most things going for him. Okay, 3 is just a really neat sheep. And then again, the one that follows the most type and kind is going to be 1. Okay, 1 again, I think blends in really well, got some width from behind and got some power up top. Give it a little bit longer there through his neck, but again, just one that doesn't add up as well. He doesn't just blow you away with his type and how he's put together. Maybe gets a little bit too frail there and at the ground. And what I mean by frail, I mean he's not quite carrying as much bone and dimension there at the ground. We need him to be bigger footed. And I don't think he's in person. I don't think this one's going to carry nearly as much hip and hind leg to him as that 3 sheep. Okay. Now here in number 2. Now 2, I'll admit, 2 is just put together a little bit funky here. I think this is one that's got kind of a shorter bodied, really youthful looking appearance. Okay. When I say youthful, I mean this one's just super shallow there in his chest floor, really neat in how he's put together in that way of just really looking like a young sheep that's just maybe got some more time. Just needs more time to really just grow out and finish out and kind of blend some things a little bit better there. That's kind of where this one falls off. He just needs more time. It's more of a prospect type sheep here and how he's put together. But again, I think got some really good pieces as far as his look and extension up front. Blend this one together a little bit better and just give him more time to get him to put in that power and muscle from behind. And then we roll into our 4 sheep. So again, he's on the other end of the spectrum. Kind of a heavier made, older type sheep who's just carrying a bit more condition to him. Kind of leaving a little bit of desired as far as his hip and hind leg goes. Just not quite having as much as he probably used to back in the day. But again, if we talk about having a young sheep over an older sheep, I want the young one. The young one's going to taste better. He's going to have maybe less. He's going to have less product when it comes to the rail, but the product's going to taste a lot better, and just be a lot more youthful. Okay, those older sheep we get to where they're just kind of like a little bit greasier, going to have carry a bit more fat, and it's not going to be nearly as profitable when it comes to going to the rail. Okay, so again, 3-1, 2-4 with cuts of 4, 4, and 4.
So Brian, if we talk, and brings up a interesting point, as coming from somebody that has sheep, I would say, and if kids follow any of this stuff out there, parents follow any of it, right? If I look at Texas and the southern states, they're getting rams and wethers that are year and a half old, right? Like that's what they're doing in New York. Our animals have to be born after January 1st. They're 7-8 months max by the time they're going to processor, right? Like, what's the big difference? Is it just the growth potential with the heat, or is it just what's the deal?
So I had a very, very good friend in college that showed sheep very competitively here in Kansas, and he told us in the southern states, in Texas and Oklahoma, they can hold a sheep like no one's business. Okay, and what I mean by hold a sheep, that means they're able to take a sheep and be able to take it and feed it to where it doesn't gain a whole bunch of weight. They're going to maintain that weight. So we're going to be adding a lot of filler, a lot of other stuff that's not really going to allow them to have the proper nutrients to rock and roll and really be able to grow and get and everything. So they're going to be feeding sheep really well to be able to maintain. They do not know how to get sheep to grow. And he put it really well. He goes, look, here in the Midwest, we can grow our sheep. We can't hold our sheep. They're the opposite. They can hold their sheep, but they can't grow them. So they get into where their ideal weight of like 130, 140 pounds, but it takes them way longer to get their sheep there than it does us. And it's just kind of the common practice of how we feed our sheep, how we, how we work with nutrition and how we rock and roll with some stuff. But yeah, that's absolutely right. In the southern states, yeah, they're definitely rolling with some old lambs. And
Okay.
I do not understand why they want to do that.
Sounds good. I was gonna say we definitely can grow them in New York too, right? Right? Like, thinking, and I know some kids are. My own son, he's got Suffolks, right? And we had a 170-pound market lamb by the time they were 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to hold them back as much as we could, and we couldn't.
Yep. Yep. And I'll tell you, there's a kiddo here in Finney County that I work with really, really closely, and we've got some hogs, and he does some sheep at the county level. And how we were talking, I was like, bud, like, I really want to make sure, I really want to do it right this year. And I'm like, but I know how to feed a pig. I do not know how to feed a sheep. It's just totally different and just how we feed them. The breeder told us to have them on full feed. I was like, okay, full feed means a very different thing for me as a pig guy than it does to folks that are sheep people. So it's just kind of different, but I love it. I think the sheep deal is pretty fun. So, all right. Well, like I said, we're going to have 2 classes of each. We're going to roll right into our goats. Okay. So here we go. Get out of our sheep class. All righty. Market goats. All right. So some things with goats. So first off, make sure you have your page set up. So market goats. Okay. Now, most of the time, especially for us here in the Midwest, we tend to have boar goats, okay? And when I say boar goats, that means a breed of goat that's going to come and going to have a different colored head, and then the rest of its body is going to be predominantly white. Okay, now boar goats can come in some different colors too. Everything from kind of a light lemon yellow color to a light red brown to a black, solid black. Okay. Lots of different colors there. Okay. Excellent. Good to see that that's the same for you guys. But again, with boar goats, remember, they can have some different things. They can be red, like a solid red color, solid black color, some different stuff. Chloe, what's up?
They can also be dappled too, because I have a couple dolings that are dappled, and recently they just allowed us to be able to show them. So it's not like something that's been going on for a while. They just like recently let us do that. So
Yeah, absolutely right. That's a good point to bring up. Yep, dapple was the next color I was going to get to, or kind of a paint color. So the dapple is going to be where they got like, a solid color and some spots. A paint's going to be, maybe it's almost like they took their front, dipped it in a color, and then took their back, almost like kind of like an Oreo with a stripe there in the middle. So exactly right. A friend of mine loves dapple goat. She's trying to breed some of her does to throw some color a little bit more. So that's something that we're going to make note of as far as our IDs. Okay, so market goats, traditionally, I only really see market wethers. Okay, so we're going to rely much more so on the color. All right, so here we go. Looking at number one. All right, well, first I'm going to make note when I talk about the color. So this is a very traditional colored goat. Okay, as far as the coloring goes, it's a traditional color. So I'm going to write down traditional, and then I'm going to write down blaze face. Okay. And what I mean by blaze face, I mean that's just one that's got some color stripe coming right down the middle there. Okay. All right, very good. So then I talk about this. Let's talk about this guy. Let's think about him. Okay. Well, first thing I see again with our sheep, we wanted them dead level. Okay. Goats, yes, we want them level as well, but we can give them a little bit. Okay. But I will say this guy is pretty swayed there in his back. We definitely want him to be coming at us with a little bit heavier, a little bit more integrity there in his top line. Okay. But I'm going to look at the first priority, which is our muscle. Okay. Well, let's study him here in his leg. I see some expression. Okay. See some size here in his leg. I like that. Okay. Looks like he's got some top, maybe not a lot of top, but I definitely see some leg. He's got some power there through his hind leg. Part of that too is you can see the young man. He's got the feet up off the ground, and I think he's just kind of getting there. He's really excited. Okay, he got Grand Shaven Market Lamb. But again, so maybe relax the feet on that one a little bit. But he's got some power there from behind. So I'm going to make note he's got some powerful hind leg. Okay, got a powerful hind leg there, coming down with some foot size and some bone. Okay, again, with goats, we want them to be cool ribbed. Okay, when I say cool rib, that means really round ribbed, not too soft, but he's got some rib shape here. Okay, looking pretty good there. I think that's not a bad goat. I think it's one that's just maybe a little bit off in his balance. Gets a little bit too off there in his top, and everything else. So again, I think he's got some good pieces, but got some stuff we're maybe not a huge fan of. So I'm gonna say he's a little bit off in his balance. Okay. But again, he's kind of that traditional color, got some power from behind in his leg. Okay, going to be a little bit off balance. Yeah, he is standing a little bit there on his toes, his front toes here. Again, that's just the kiddo's got him held up really high, and everything else. All right. But again, not to take away from him. So here we go. Number two. All right. So number two, you can kind of see a little bit. There's some color there. That's going to be a mostly white face goat. Okay. A mostly white face goat there. Okay. All right. And this one I can tell already. This one has some leg muscle. Okay. You can kind of see that ripple there and that expression. So I'm going to make a note right away. This one has some really expressive muscle. Really, really expressive there. You see that pop there in his hip. That's a lot of muscle right there coming down to a really, really big, powerful hind leg. Stepping here up top, that one's definitely got to have plenty of width and dimension over the top side. I think he's even got some right here in his shoulder, got plenty of muscle. So he's really, really expressive in his muscling, and he's really powerful. Okay. That sheep in the last class, I called him, in my mind, he was kind of just the power sheep. Well, this guy right here has got lots and lots of power. Chloe thinks he looks fat. I wouldn't say he looks fat. He looks kind of finished right where he's at. Just got some really neat rib shape there. And he comes in and fills it in really, really well. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of fat on this goat. But again, something else that's neat is he's coming down really, really big bone. Lots of bone there. Remember, we don't eat bone, but it oftentimes helps us to understand, hey, that one's got some width. I'm going to have some stoutness there. And you look at this one up through his neck. He's definitely got some good pieces as far as how he's built up front. Got some neck and length up there. Okay, so he's well built. He's pretty. Okay. And he's
Riley,
really
can you talk a little bit about levelness on the top line with the goats? So for
Yep.
the kids, right? Like, I think especially the hip to rump, right? Like that's right, the ski slope
Yes.
before that.
Yep. So think about it this way. Okay. Sheep were the first species that we domesticated. Okay. And what that means is we took wild sheep and made them farm sheep. So the first species we did it with. Okay. Not goats. Back when I was a kid, way young, we didn't even have market goats at our fair. Okay. So I know it's probably something you guys have never experienced, but back in the day, people didn't show goats like at all. And if they showed goats, they showed dairy goats. And there was maybe 2 families that did it. No one really had market goats. So as time goes on, we breed for those traits, this idea of selective breeding. We breed for those traits to really make sure that they're doing good and improving. Goats are not going to have a dead level hip like a sheep does. Okay, it's just not how they're built. And so yes, Brian called it a ski slope. That's exactly right. Now we want them to try and have a little bit of a leveler hip, but it's not something I'm going to sit here and really rag on a goat of, oh man, he's donkey hipped. He's running down a ski slope there. I don't like that. We can give a little bit more to that one because you look at this guy and look at the last one, we kind of come off here. Okay. Again, the tail heads just aren't going to be super duper cranked up all the time, and that's okay. So I'm glad you brought that up, Brian. All right. Number 3. Okay. So first thing, super, super expressive in his muscling. Again, kind of a traditional colored goat. Okay. He's really expressive in his muscling. Okay. But as I study this one further, look in there from his shoulder on down. Someone talked about the first one being on his toes. Guys, this one's got his feet on the ground, and he is a super straight-legged goat. Okay? This guy's not going to move super great. Okay? So I'm going to say this one, he's not great in his design. He's really, really straight. Okay? And there's a difference between being correct in sheep and goats and being straight. Okay, and this is just too much. Way too straight up front. Okay, and part of it too is, okay, this one's got and we talk about them sloping out of their hip a little bit. We want some length there in their hip, and he's got no length. He is super, super short hipped. Okay, when I talk about any species, I don't want them to be super short hip because if they're super short hip, they're going to be really short striding because their hips aren't long enough to be able to really get them out and get them to stretch. So again, he's short hipped. He comes at the ground really, really straight, not super comfortable. He's a short-bodied kind of guy, so he's really compact. All right, so again, one that's really compact, he's really, really expressive and really powerful in his muscle, but one who I don't think really has the best overall design and skeleton to him. Okay? Kind of missing some things with that. All right? Okay, our final sheep. Again, it's hard to read. I really need to update some of these pictures because they're a little bit blurry. But as I mentioned right here, great ID to throw out there, the black-headed sheep. Or sorry, the goat. Okay, this is the only black-headed goat in the class. Only black-headed goat in the class. All right, now, this one, as I study him, I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is one that's going to have some power. Okay, there's some top in there, there's some leg. Maybe not quite as much as some other goats we've seen, but that's a cool designed one. He's really, really shallow and elevated up in his chest floor, carrying a really, really long and extended neck. I like the rib shape in that one. He's probably the levelest we've seen of any goat in class so far. Again, so a good design one. Got some muscle. And again, I know it's hard to see him there in the picture. It's really kind of blurry, but again, that's a really good design one with with some muscle to him. Got plenty of look up front, really shallow chested. Okay. All right. It's kind of what I got on that guy. Okay, maybe needs more muscle. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through them all through again. Let's go through just a quick overview of them. So number one, okay, we said that guy's got some hip. He's got some power. Maybe not the best design sheep. Gets a little bit too loose there in his top. A little straight there in his front. He's probably definitely the pounds heavy goat. This is probably going to be the goat that's going to be the heaviest weight. All right. Coming up here, number two, super short backed, really, really stout one. He's coming at the ground, really big footed. Got a super neat look up front. Love the ribbon, that guy. I don't think there's really a lot of things that I don't like about that sheep, about that goat. Okay. Three, again, one's got plenty of power, really, really expressive there in his muscle. But it comes to a fault a little bit here. He's a little bit really, really straight right up front, kind of shorter hipped. And he's maybe got a little bit too much fill here through his rib. All right. Number four, really, really cool designed one. Really level and neat at the top. Got enough muscle today. Okay. There we go. Okay. Go ahead and start putting in your placings, guys. Okay. Yes, Chloe.
So I had a question. Is it common to see black-headed goats in the show? Because I just had one born here on my farm, and do they win much or no?
Yep. So as a livestock evaluator, I'll tell you right now, sure, I've got some color preferences of what I like, maybe what I don't like. But as far as the quality of the animal goes, that's what most evaluators are really focused on. I wouldn't worry too terrible much about having a black-headed one and thinking that it's not going to win or not be successful. But will tell you, yeah, sometimes, I mean, there's a family that I was visiting just the other day that they were like, I love this pig. He's super cool. He's really, really stout. He's rugged. He's an awesome little rascal, but he's all black. So sometimes there's just certain species that people get hung up on the color a little bit. But there's also some people who really don't like dapple goats or don't like paints as far as a market animal goes.
Her mom is 75% pure boar goat, and the dad is all commercial. And she looks beautiful, but she was just born last March. She is not too big now. We didn't think she was gonna grow very well, but let me tell you, she grew like a weed. But yeah, I haven't I've shown for like 3 years now. And I haven't really seen many goats with black heads. They've all been like brown or light brown. And I was just wondering, do they do bad or do they do good? Like,
It's
hmm.
Yep. It's honestly up to the judge there. But for me, I try and read through the color a little bit, study the animal for the quality of it. But all right. Well, let's go ahead and look at this class again. Okay, so officials on this class, you don't have them down. It's going to be 2, 4, 3, 1. All right. 2, 4, 3, 1. I'm seeing some high fives around. That's awesome. All right. 2, 4, 3, 1 with cuts of 4, 3, and 4. So again, okay, when I talk about a goat that's just really ideal, as far as just looking like a really, really powerful, stout little fella, that's this sheep here. All right, the predominantly white-headed goat is one that I think just carries a crazy amount of power and dimension. He's a little bit of a shorter back goat, which is kind of a trend we're starting to lean more towards. The shorter back, stouter made ones. Again, lots and lots of leg and expression there in his muscle. from behind, stepping on a great big foot with lots and lots of bone, super extended up front, really shallow and elevated in his chest floor. There's not really a lot of bad in that goat at all. Really kind of hard to find a hole in him. Really, really like that one for his kind. Following up again, I think again, the picture's kind of hard and distorts him a little bit. Bit of a longer body type goat here, the black-headed wether. But I think one that's got really, really good design, really well built, super elevated up there, shallow in his chest floor, super extended up there through his head and neck. Gives you a really fancy appearance. Just doesn't quite have the extra dimension and power packed in there through his hip and hind leg, and just doesn't quite come down to the ground with his stout of foot and bone. But again, I think a really well-designed goat that's designed and put together really nicely. Just needs to pack a bit more punch there from behind. Okay. And then coming up here, number 3. I think 3 is simply going to have the carcass of the goats here in the bottom. This is the one that's just super, super whipped up. Really, really powerful. Lots and lots of hip, lots and lots of meat there on that one. Going to be a carcass goat for sure. Just unfortunately, he's not built right.
No.
Built to last the span of time. Just one who's really just kind of struggling a little bit there with how he's put together. Too straight on both ends of his skeleton, just really kind of a structural issue. But again, as far as power and muscle goes, that one's got a lot. And then we rounded out this goat. You know, he's just kind of plain. He's just kind of there. I think we get our hands on that one. He's probably going to have some muscle and some width there up over his top through his rack and down his loin. Got some power there from behind, but again, one that's just kind of plain in his look. Get a little bit too weak there in his top line. Just need to change that one up a little bit. Okay, so again, the placings go 2, 4, 3, 1. All right. Good job there, guys. So that's that first class of goats, okay? And just like the last one, we're going to go ahead and set up for our second class of goats and be able to rock and roll. And I'm going to let you guys kind of make your own decisions on that one. We'll talk about them. Okay, goats. Yes, this class. Don't mind me talking to myself. Okay. Here we go. Let's set it up and let's do it. Market goats number 2. And actually, I was in high school before I even saw a market goat class in a judging contest. So it's pretty crazy. Goats have really come a long way pretty quick. All right, here we go. Market goats 2. Number 1. Again, traditional colored wether. Studying for his muscles, studying for his balance, his design. Okay, number 2. Okay, if you saw the other side of this one, I'd guess that color goes down all the way. So this is what I'd describe as a paint goat. Okay, number 3. Number 4. Something I want to point out. When we talk about IDs, this is what I would call the long caped goat. Okay, when the coloring comes all the way down here past their neck into their shoulder, we call that a cape. So he is the long caped goat. Okay, I'm going to go through them all again. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Okay, I see lots of folks go ahead and turn in their placing. That's awesome to see. All right, let's go through them all and talk through them before we show an official placing here. Okay, so number 1, okay, for me, first off, guys, I think there's 2 goats that we really, really like a lot of things. I think some really powerfully made, really well designed ones. For me, that's 1 and 4. Okay, as you really study 1 and 4, I think they're definitely the combination goats. They have some design, some dimension, really, really put together really nicely. I think number 1 definitely has a really rugged and really stout look. He's really big-footed there at the ground. Carries some dimension there from behind. He's really expressive there in his muscling. Really appreciate this one just for his overall look, and it's really rugged and masculine in his appearance. Like the rib shape in that one, and one that I think is going to be a really profitable carcass overall. Okay, looking here at number 2. 2's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. For me, when I walk up to this class and I see that 1, he's one I'm going to have to just throw to the bottom pretty quick. All right, 2 can't really leave the bottom on that class. He is certainly got a soft, easy feeding look, which is something we talked about with some of our cattle and our goats, or our cattle and our hogs, but that's not really something we super strive for in our sheep and goats, having a super deep, soggy, easy feeding look. He's one who's just probably doesn't carry as much integrity and power there up over his top. Really not as a little bit off there in his top line. And again, this paint goat, just one that I think's just he's kind of there. He's just a plain Jane goat. Nothing crazy special about this one. Doesn't really have any kind of look or show design. Again, one that I think just used to go bottom pretty quick in about most every class, but especially in this one when we've already seen some that are super, super neat and designed. This one right here, guys, that is a super duper cool design goat. Okay. Dead level down his top, really, really round and shallow in his rib shape. Appreciate that one. He's really youthful in his appearance. I can tell this one's definitely a younger goat. It's definitely got some good positive things for him on down the road. It's probably going to be the pounds light go to this class if I had to guess. Coming in here to 4. Okay, this one definitely catches your eye just for being a really, really neat design, really, really cool made one. Love a lot of things about it, a lot of balance, a lot of just positive, pretty things. I mean, for me, the long Cape goat here is just the pretty boy. He's a pretty, pretty boy. And so then I asked myself, does he have enough muscle? And for me, he does. He certainly does have enough muscle. If you study him here through his hip and his leg, definitely got some power there. All right. Got plenty up top and just really, really well built and really, really nicely designed. And I thought there were quite a few folks. Yep. A lot of folks started 1, a lot of folks started 4. Very good. You got to keep 1 and 4 in the top for sure. Okay. Now the officials for this class go 1, 4, 3, 2. 1, 4, 3, 2. So again, with cuts of 2, 6, and 3. So though I think 4 is definitely the pretty boy, I don't know that he has quite as much mass and power as 1. And again, I talk about them being pretty. We want to make sure that they're built right, designed well. But for me, you got to make sure that they also have enough to them. And this guy has plenty of design, but he's just blows you away as far as his muscle and power. I just think that's just a super, super cool one as far as how he's put together. When you talk about taking one to the rail, he's going to go with the most pounds of product and easily have the most profitable carcass. Okay. In addition to it, he's got plenty of look and is pretty for me. This guy, like I said, super, super pretty, really, really cool design. That long cape weather. Again, one that I think just needs to be a little bit power stouter there from behind. Just really coming at you just with a bit more width and dimension. But definitely a really, really cool, really pretty one that's got a really neat design, really shallow in his rib cage there, and love the extension and look up front. Again, nothing to take away from the looks of this one, just not quite as powerful. I'm going to have quite as profitable of a carcass as the 1 weather. Coming up here, I think 3, definitely, like I mentioned before, really, really neat design goat. Super, super cool and sleek in how he's put together. Really up-headed, really nice and extended there up through his front. Again, when he's super shallow in his rib shape, appreciate that. Just the pounds light. I think if they add, another 20 pounds to this one, he can definitely make a run in for a top spot. But one I think just sits as a logical 3rd. I can't separate those 2 powerful two powerful goats that are also carrying quite a bit of a dimension and look through him to get him up there to inch up over him. And then here, like we talked about, this is just a goat he's just a goat. All right. He's a bit too soft there in his middle. Maybe going to be pushed a little bit there in as far as his overall prime and maturity pattern. One that I think is just kind of putting on a little bit too much fat and finish there. One who just doesn't have nearly as enough muscle to move any higher. And just kind of just doesn't give you any super neat look or anything special or extravagant like that. All right. So again, the placings go. Start with 1, 4, 3, 2. Very fun little goat class there. So, alrighty. Like I mentioned, I do have a banquet I've got to get to this evening. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to cut us just a little bit short if that's all right. I do kind of got to get scurrying over there because I think they've kind of already without me. So
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
so a huge thank you, Rylan. So I think you're right on time. You're not early, you're not late, right? So we
Perfect.
appreciate it. And next week we're doing breeding heifers, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, I'm
Breeding
very
beef.
excited about breeding heifers.
So we start breeding the series on breeding. So we will have this up on YouTube in the next day or 2, and I'll send that out. But then next week we start breeding animals for 3 weeks. All right, guys. Have a great night. And thank you guys. Thank you, Rylan.
You're welcome.